My husband created a fake dating profile using my photos to test if other men would want me. When I found matches sending me screenshots, he said he was checking my market value before our anniversary. I thought I knew everything about my husband Mark after 8 years of marriage. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and have been happily married since. Or at least, I thought we were happy. Mark works in IT security, and I'm a marketing coordinator at a local nonprofit. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Denver, own our home, and have 2 cats named Pixel and Bite that Mark insisted on naming after computer terms. Last Tuesday started like any other day. I was getting ready for work when my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Someone I didn't recognize had sent me a direct message. The profile looked fake, just some random guy named Jake with barely any followers. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. The message said, "Hey, I know this is weird, but I matched with someone on Bumble who's using your photos. Thought you should know in case someone stole your pics. Here's a screenshot." My blood went cold. Attached was a screenshot of a Bumble profile with my photos. My actual photos from our vacation to Cabo last year, me in my favorite yellow sundress, even one from my birthday dinner at that fancy steakhouse downtown. But the name on the profile wasn't mine. It said Jessica, 29 with a bio that read, "Looking for someone who appreciates a woman who takes care of herself. Love hiking, wine tastings, and intimate conversations." I stared at my phone, my hands shaking. Who would steal my photos? And why? I immediately thought about identity theft, but this was different. This was personal. I screenshot everything and tried to process what I was seeing. The bio mentioned hiking, which I hate, and wine tastings, which I'm allergic to. Someone had not only stolen my photos but created an entirely different personality. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I kept checking my phone, wondering if I should report it to Bumble or maybe even the police. During my lunch break, I got another message. This time from a different guy named Connor. "Hi, sorry to bother you, but I think someone is catfishing using your pictures. I reverse searched one of the images and found your Facebook. Just wanted to give you a heads up." 2 messages in one day. My stomach churned as I realized this fake profile was actively being used. I thanked both guys for reaching out and asked them to send me any other details they had. Connor mentioned that Jessica had been chatting with him for 3 days and seemed very interested in meeting up. That evening, I decided to confront this head-on. I downloaded Bumble and started searching for the fake profile myself. It took about 20 minutes, but I found it. There I was, smiling in photos from our anniversary dinner, our weekend in Aspen, even one from my company Christmas party. Seeing my face attached to someone else's lies made me feel violated in a way I'd never experienced. I screenshot everything again and decided to tell Mark. He was in his home office working on his laptop when I walked in, my phone clutched in my hand. "Mark, something really disturbing happened today," I said, sitting down across from his desk. He looked up, concerned. "What's wrong? You look upset." I showed him the screenshots and explained about the messages from Jake and Connor. Mark's face went through several expressions: surprise, concern, then something I couldn't quite identify. "That's terrible, honey. Do you want me to help you report it? I know how these dating apps work from a security perspective." His immediate offer to help should have been comforting, but something in his tone felt off. Too calm, too prepared. "Yeah, that would be great," I said, watching his face carefully. "It's just so weird. They use photos from really specific events. Not just random pictures from my social media." Mark nodded seriously. "Catfishers are getting more sophisticated. They probably scrape your photos from Facebook or Instagram." But I knew my privacy settings. My Instagram was private, and my Facebook photos were limited to friends only. The photos on the fake profile included some I'd never even posted online. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about Mark's reaction bothered me. He'd been almost too helpful, too understanding. In 8 years of marriage, I'd learned to read his tells when he was hiding something. The way he avoided eye contact, how his voice got slightly higher, the way he kept fidgeting with his wedding ring. The next morning, after Mark left for work, I did something I'd never done before. I went into his home office and looked at his computer. I know his password because we've always been open about these things, or so I thought. I started with his browser history, but it was clean. Too clean. Mark wasn't the type to regularly clear his history. Then I checked his downloads folder. Most of it was work-related files, but there was a folder labeled backup photos that I'd never seen before. Inside were dozens of my photos. Photos from our phones, our cameras, even some I'd forgotten about. But these weren't just saved in the way a husband might back up his wife's photos. They were organized, sorted by outfits and locations, like someone was curating them for a specific purpose. My hands were trembling as I kept digging. In his email drafts, I found something that made my world tilt sideways. It was an email he'd never sent, addressed to himself, with the subject line Jessica profile notes. The email contained detailed information about conversations with various men on Bumble. Notes about their interests, their jobs, their relationship status. And at the bottom, a disturbing summary: most responsive to confident, slightly unavailable personality. Several requests for meetups. Market value assessment, high interest, multiple viable options. I felt like I was going to throw up. My husband, the man I trusted completely, had been catfishing men using my photos. But why? I kept searching and found a hidden folder on his desktop labeled Anniversary Project. Inside was a PowerPoint presentation titled Market Analysis, Sarah's Relationship Value. The presentation was 12 slides long. It included graphs showing response rates from different types of men, analysis of the most successful photos, and a comparison of Jessica's popularity versus what Mark called control profiles using stock photos. The final slide was titled Conclusion and Anniversary Application. It contained bullet points that made me feel sick. Subject: maintains high market value at age 31, strong interest from men aged 28 to 40 across various professions. Physical attractiveness rating remains competitive. Recommendation: safe to proceed with anniversary investment, jewelry. I stared at the screen in complete disbelief. My husband had spent weeks, maybe months, pretending to be me on a dating app to assess my market value before our anniversary. He'd been treating me like a commodity, analyzing my worth like I was a stock he was considering purchasing. The most disturbing part was the casual, business-like tone of his analysis. This wasn't some moment of jealous insecurity. This was calculated, methodical, and deeply manipulative. I printed everything. The emails, the presentation, the photo folders, all of it. Then I sat at our kitchen table and waited for Mark to come home. When he walked through the door at 6:30, I was still sitting there with the printed pages spread in front of me. "Hey babe, how was your day?" he called out cheerfully as he hung up his jacket. "Come sit down, Mark. We need to talk." Something in my tone made him pause. He walked into the kitchen and saw the papers. I watched his face change as he recognized his own PowerPoint slides. "Sarah, I can explain." "Please do," I said quietly. "Explain why you've been catfishing men using my photos. Explain this market analysis presentation. Explain why you've been treating me like a product you're evaluating." Mark sat down heavily, his face pale. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you created a fake dating profile using my photos to test how attractive other men find me, documented their responses in a business presentation, and plan to use this data to decide how much money to spend on my anniversary gift. When you put it like that, it sounds bad. How else should I put it, Mark?" He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I was just worried." "Worried about what?" "About us. About whether you still found me attractive, whether you might leave me for someone better. I see how other guys look at you, and I started wondering what would happen if you realized you could do better." I stared at him. "So you decided to find out by pretending to be me, flirting with other men?" "I wasn't flirting. I was just seeing if they were interested. I needed to know where we stood." "Where we stood?" "Mark, we're married. We stood at an altar 8 years ago and promised to be faithful to each other. You've been violating that promise and my privacy for months. I never actually met any of them. I never planned to cheat. But you've been having conversations with dozens of men while pretending to be me. Do you understand how violating that feels? You've been using my face, my photos, my identity to manipulate other people." Mark's defense was falling apart. "I just needed to know that you were still valuable, that our marriage was still worth investing in." "Our marriage isn't a stock portfolio, Mark. You don't get to evaluate my market value to decide if I'm worth buying anniversary jewelry for." "That's not how I meant it." "That's exactly how you meant it. I read your presentation. You literally used business terminology to analyze my attractiveness to other men." We sat in silence for several minutes. I could see Mark trying to find the right words to make this okay, but there weren't any. Finally, he said, "I know I messed up. But doesn't this prove that our marriage is solid? You scored really high on attractiveness, and I'm still the one who gets to be with you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mark, you've been catfishing people using my identity. You've violated my privacy, betrayed my trust, and treated me like an object. And your takeaway is that our marriage is solid because other men find me attractive? I love you, Sarah. Everything I did was because I love you and didn't want to lose you. If you loved me, you would have talked to me about your insecurities instead of stealing my identity and manipulating strangers. What do you want me to do? I'll delete everything. I'll never do anything like this again." I looked at the man I'd been married to for 8 years and realized I didn't know him at all. "I want you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else for a while. I need time to think." Sarah, please. Don't let this ruin everything we've built. You already ruined it, Mark. The moment you decided to treat me like a market commodity instead of your wife. Update 1. It's been a week since I discovered Mark's twisted social experiment, and I'm still processing everything. After our confrontation, Mark did pack a bag and went to stay with his brother Dave. He's been texting me daily, alternating between apologies and justifications that somehow make everything worse. Yesterday I got a text that said, I showed Dave a presentation and he said my analysis was actually pretty thorough. Maybe we could use this data to make our relationship stronger? I stared at that message for 10 minutes. The fact that he shared his creepy market analysis with his brother and somehow thought that made it better shows how fundamentally he doesn't understand what he did wrong. I've been staying with my sister Emma for the past few days because being in our house feels contaminated. Emma is a therapist, and she's been helping me work through the psychological implications of what Mark did. What he did is a form of identity theft and emotional abuse, she told me over coffee this morning. He stole your identity to conduct an experiment on your worth as a person. That's not love, Sarah. That's control. She's right, but it's hard to accept that the man I've loved for 11 years could be capable of something so manipulative. The worst part is that I keep discovering new violations. I decided to check if Mark had used my photos anywhere else, so I did reverse image searches on several pictures. I found Jessica on 3 other dating platforms, Tinder, Hinge, and Match.com. On Tinder, Jessica had 247 matches. On Hinge, 89 likes. On Match.com, 34 messages from potential suitors. Mark had been busy. I also found chat logs he'd saved. On Tinder, Jessica had been talking to a guy named Michael for 2 weeks. Mark had been telling him about my job at a marketing firm, my actual job, my love of hiking, which I hate, and my interest in finding someone financially stable, something I've never cared about. Reading these conversations was like watching someone wear my skin while living a completely different life. Mark had created an entire personality for fake me, and it wasn't flattering. This version of me was superficial, materialistic, and manipulative. Is that how he sees me? Even worse, I found evidence that Mark had been taking new photos of me specifically for the profiles. There were pictures from recent dates that I remembered him taking, saying he wanted to capture the moment. But these photos had never made it to our social media or family albums. They'd gone straight to Jessica's dating profiles. The violation feels deeper every day. How long had he been planning this? How many moments that I thought were genuine expressions of love were actually just him gathering content for his sick experiment? I called the dating apps to report the fake profiles, but the process is frustratingly slow. Meanwhile, Jessica is still out there, still matching with unsuspecting men using my face. 3 days ago, I got another message from a guy named Tyler who had matched with Jessica on Hinge. But this message was different. Hi, I hope this doesn't sound crazy, but I think the person I've been talking to on Hinge is using your photos. We were supposed to meet for coffee yesterday, and when Jessica didn't show up, I got suspicious and did some digging. I found your LinkedIn profile and realized the photos are the same. I thought you should know. I thanked Tyler and asked him to send me screenshots of his conversations with Jessica. What I saw made me realize Mark's experiment had evolved into something even more disturbing. Jessica had been making plans to meet Tyler in person. They had arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown last Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mark had never intended to show up, obviously, but he'd let this poor guy sit there waiting for a woman who doesn't exist. I felt responsible for Tyler's wasted time and emotional confusion, even though I had no part in creating it. I apologized profusely and explained the situation. Tyler was understanding but also disturbed. That's really messed up, he texted back. I've been talking to Jessica for 3 weeks. We had some pretty deep conversations about life and relationships. Finding out it was all fake feels like a real betrayal, even though I never actually met her. That's when it hit me. Mark's experiment wasn't just violating my privacy and identity. He was emotionally manipulating innocent people who thought they were connecting with a real person. How many men had wasted their time, energy, and emotions on conversations with my husband pretending to be me? I started reaching out to the other guys who had messaged me initially. Jake, who first alerted me to the fake profile, told me he'd been talking to Jessica for 5 days before getting suspicious. Connor had been chatting for over a week and was starting to develop feelings. I really thought I'd found someone special, Connor wrote when I explained the situation. Jessica seemed so genuine and interesting. This is really going to mess with my ability to trust people on dating apps. Mark had created a trail of emotional damage that extended far beyond our marriage. These weren't just statistics in his market analysis. They were real people with real feelings who had been deceived and manipulated. When I confronted Mark about the planned meetup with Tyler, his response was chilling. I never intended to actually meet any of them, he texted. I was just testing how far I could push the interactions. Tyler messaging me about coffee proved that Jessica was desirable enough to warrant in-person meetings. That's valuable data. Valuable data? He was talking about manipulating a stranger's emotions like it was a successful business metric. That's when I knew for certain that this marriage was over. Update 2. I filed for divorce yesterday. After 2 weeks of Mark's continued justifications and complete lack of understanding about what he'd done, I realized there was no coming back from this. The final straw came when I discovered he'd been documenting everything for what he called a follow-up study. Emma had suggested I change all my passwords and check my accounts for any other violations. When I logged into our shared Google Drive, I found a new folder labeled Project Jessica, Phase 2. Inside was a detailed analysis of my behavior since discovering his experiment. Mark had been tracking my emotional responses, documenting our conversations, and creating what he called a crisis management assessment. He was studying my reaction to being studied. The folder contained charts showing my anger timeline, analysis of my texting patterns, and predictions about how long it would take me to return to baseline emotional stability. He even created a probability matrix for different reconciliation scenarios. One document was titled Subject Support Network Analysis and contained detailed notes about my conversations with Emma, my stay at her house, and his assessment of how my support system was influencing my decision-making. Most disturbing was a file called Leverage Points for Reconciliation that outlined strategies for winning me back. These included: emphasize financial stability of marriage versus uncertainty of divorce, highlight subject's emotional dependence patterns, utilize anniversary timing for maximum emotional impact, present reformed behavior as evidence of commitment. Reading this felt like discovering I'd been married to a sociopath. Mark had turned our entire relationship into a series of psychological experiments. Even his attempts at reconciliation were calculated manipulations based on his analysis of my personality. I printed everything and took it straight to a divorce attorney. In 20 years of family law, I've never seen anything quite like this, my lawyer said after reviewing the documents. This level of psychological manipulation and documentation suggests a pattern of controlling behavior that goes well beyond typical marital problems. She recommended I also consult with a therapist who specializes in psychological abuse, because what Mark had done constituted a form of coercive control. The hardest part was accepting that our entire marriage had been built on lies. If Mark was capable of this level of deception and manipulation, how much of our relationship had been genuine? I started going through our shared photos and memories, trying to identify other moments that might have been part of his data collection. That romantic dinner where he kept taking pictures? Was he documenting my responses for some experiment? The weekend getaway where he seemed so interested in my conversations with other people? Was he studying my social interactions? The man I thought I knew was methodical, but I'd always seen it as a positive trait. He was organized, planned ahead, thought things through. Now I realize he'd been applying that same analytical approach to manipulating me and others. When I told Mark about the divorce filing, his response was exactly what his reconciliation strategy document had predicted he would do. He emphasized our financial stability, reminded me of my emotional dependence patterns, and tried to use our upcoming anniversary as leverage. Sarah, we have 8 years together. We own a house. We have shared investments. You're throwing away everything we've built over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Mark. I found your Phase 2 documents. I know you've been studying my reactions and planning manipulation strategies. There was a long pause. I was just trying to understand how to fix things. By treating me like a lab rat in your psychological experiments? You're being dramatic. I'm being rational. For the first time in years, I'm seeing our relationship clearly. Mark's brother Dave called me later that day, asking if we could talk. I agreed to meet him for coffee, hoping he might provide some insight into how Mark had become this person. Look, Sarah, I know Mark screwed up, Dave said. But this seems like an extreme reaction. Can't you guys work through this? I showed Dave some of the documents Mark had created. His face changed as he read through the market analysis and psychological manipulation strategies. Jesus, Mark, he muttered. I knew you were overthinking things, but this is sick? I suggested. Yeah. This is sick. Dave admitted that Mark had been asking him strange questions about women and relationships for months. Questions about what makes someone attractive, how to measure relationship success, whether it was normal to worry about your partner's market value. I thought he was just being insecure, Dave said. I had no idea he was doing all this. Dave also revealed something that explained a lot. Mark had apparently been seeing a relationship coach for the past year. Someone who marketed themselves as helping men optimize their romantic success through data-driven relationship strategies. I looked up this coach online and found a website full of toxic advice about treating relationships like business ventures. There were courses on measuring your partner's value, managing relationship investments, and using psychological principles to maintain romantic leverage. Mark had been taking courses on how to manipulate me. The divorce proceedings are moving quickly since we don't have children and Mark doesn't want to contest it. I think he finally realizes the extent of the damage he's caused, not just to our marriage but to his relationships with his family and friends. His manipulation wasn't just directed at me. Dave told me that Mark had been studying and manipulating him too, asking calculated questions to gather information he could use in his reconciliation strategies. Last week, I got a final text from Mark. I know I can't fix this, but I want you to know that all the data confirmed what I already knew. You're an amazing person, and I'm the idiot who destroyed the best thing in my life by trying to prove it with charts and graphs. It might have been touching if I didn't know that Mark's apologies were likely just another calculated strategy from his reconciliation playbook. I'm moving to a new apartment next month and starting fresh. The violation of trust goes so deep that I don't think I'll ever fully recover from it, but I'm working with a therapist to rebuild my sense of safety and autonomy. The fake dating profiles have finally been removed, but the psychological damage Mark caused extends to all the men he manipulated while pretending to be me. I've been in contact with several of them, and many are struggling with trust issues around online dating. Mark turned our marriage into a laboratory and treated everyone involved like test subjects in his twisted experiments. I'm just grateful I discovered it before he moved on to phase 3 of whatever psychological manipulation he had planned next. Some violations of trust are too fundamental to overcome. When someone treats you like a commodity to be analyzed rather than a person to be loved, there's no coming back from that. I'm finally free from being someone's research project, and I'm never going back.